Hiya, folks, I'm back. The Gilbert Gottfried's Genjo Koan was a ratings disaster. I never saw such low view counts on any of my videos, not even from the very beginning. So I don't know, maybe folks don't want that. If you want it, ask me and I'd be glad to do some more, but it just doesn't seem like people were watching them. So I thought I'd do something different today. Yesterday I did another Zoom thingy, I don't know what we're calling them, with the Angel City Zen Center. And near the end of the talk, one of the participants asked, what should we do with all this information we're getting, the information on the current, world situation that we're all dealing with right now? And I remembered a story which I believe I have already shared on this YouTube channel in a kind of a shortened form, but I'd like to give you the longer form. So if you've heard this before, this is going to be the longer version of the story. In my family, there is a genetic disorder called Huntington's disease, and I've mentioned this before. My mother died from it, two of my aunts died from it, my grandmother died from it on my mother's side. And if you are the progeny, the son or daughter of a person who has Huntington's disease, then you have statistically a 50% chance of inheriting it yourself. So this is kind of a scary thing. And normally the progress of the disease is that it starts to show symptoms in your 30s. And by the time you're like 40 or 45 years old, you're pretty well symptomatic. And the time that I was studying most with Nishijima Roshi was also my 30s. I went over to Japan when I was 29 years old. So this is exactly the time when I was most concerned about my chances of developing this thing. So one of the times that I met with Nishijima Roshi, I sat in his little office in front of him and talked to him about this stuff and about how scary it was and how it was affecting my whole demeanor and everything. I'm shaking my hands. I'm not doing that. Shaking hands is one of the signs of Huntington's disease, but I'm just shaking my hands to make a gesture right now. Anyway, so I told him all about this, and sometime during the conversation, I must have brought up the fact that I at the time didn't know a whole lot about Huntington's disease. I'd read like a pamphlet about it when I was a teenager, a 2-page thing. And that was the sum total of my information about Huntington's disease. And I must have told him that I deliberately stayed away from learning too much about it because it always freaked me out. The more I learned about it, the more scary it got. And he told me that he thought I should look at hated information. That's how he put it. And at this point in my time with Nishijima, I was developing a real trust in him and a real kind of, okay, if she says something, let me see if that works. So I was living in Japan, and I don't remember if Amazon existed yet or not, or how I did this, but somehow I ordered 5 or 10, a stack of books about Huntington's disease, and received them 2 weeks later or whatever, and just spent some time reading those books about Huntington's disease and like getting super informed, doing exactly the opposite of what I've been doing for years. And this is the part where every time I try to sort of express this idea, I seem to put my foot in my mouth and people get upset and go, ah! But my conclusion after reading those books is these guys don't know anything. and I have said this a few times in the course of this, pandemic stuff, but I'm going to say it again. What I mean when I say they don't know anything is they do know some things. So concerning the books about Huntington's disease, they knew the history of the disease, the progress of the disease, they knew the genetics, stuff, and they could tell you what happened to the nerves and so forth in the typical progression and, what age it started and blah, blah, blah. And they had a lot of facts. But when it came to what this all was going to do for me, how it was going to affect me, they didn't know anything. They didn't know if I was going to get it. They didn't know if I wasn't going to get it. They didn't know anything like that. Well, obviously they wouldn't know that, but it became clear. And another aspect of it also became clear was that a lot of times the writers of these books were just speculating, but they would present their speculations as if they were facts. And I came across this, fairly constantly throughout the books. And the one instance I remember off, the top of my head, because this must have been the one that really, I don't know, sealed the deal for me, so to speak, was that one of the books had said that if you have the gene for Huntington's disease, you will definitely develop the disease unless you die before the disease can develop. This is trying to account for the very low percentage of people who develop the disease later than in their 30s. And I think it went on to say something like, even if a person dies at age 89 or 95 or something, that just means that the disease hadn't developed yet, and they would have developed it if they'd lived longer. And I thought, well, that's not science. That's just speculation. You don't know that. That's not a fact. And it occurred to me, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I remember it occurred to me at the time, well, this person must be aware of people who died at, relatively or maybe extremely old age, who were then autopsied or whatever to find out if they had the gene. Because in the early days, I think you had to do an autopsy to discover it. I don't remember. But anyway, and found out there were people who had the gene and then never developed the disease. But they couldn't, this author couldn't, make that fact fit his theory, so he invented another theory, which said they would, if they lived to 117 years old, they would have developed it, which is, bullshit. It's just bullshit. So every book I was reading about this contained a certain amount of factual information and a certain amount of bullshit. And it was mostly factual information, and the bullshit was a small amount, but it gave me a window into the process by which people make these sorts of predictions and statements and, statements of fact, And concerning the current pandemic stuff, it's taken me a while, as I've mentioned earlier, I'm kind of staying away from the news and social media. But at the same time, I'm kind of using the power of the internet to search for other sources of information about what we're dealing with, and especially very sober sources of information. And one of the things I came across recently, which I tried to find a link to this, but my memory is too poor, and I went through my history, and so I couldn't find a link to it. So I would have provided it if I could. But it was a guy talking about how they figured out these statistical models for predicting how COVID-19 will go. And he was pointing out that we don't have enough hard facts that you can make these statistical models without having to just plug in numbers more or less arbitrarily or based on a kind of a educated guess. And he went into some specifics. He kind of looked at one of the very popular models. I think it's the so-called Imperial College model, which is what President Trump is following, apparently, that predicts a really disastrous outcome with a huge amount of deaths. And he was pointing out that in this place, in this place, in this place, these numbers they've put into this model are just arbitrary. They don't know. They have to kind of guess. And I realized, well, all of, it's a lot of guessing. There's a lot of guessing going on, and nobody really knows how anything is going to go. So my recommendation, as I've said several times, and what I'm doing is just going, well, let's assume the worst case scenarios are the ones, and let's err on the side of caution, which is what I see our government, the United States government, at least attempting to do. They're taking that, the Imperial College model, I hope I'm getting the name right, which predicts a huge number of deaths, 2.2 million at the highest and 100,000 at the lowest, 100,000 if we do all the countermeasures. And they've decided to err on the side of caution and follow that model. But there's also the so-called Oxford model, which predicts a much lower casualty rate and a much better survival and a much less potent disease that we're going to be dealing with once we add up all the numbers. So there's that model. And as far as I can tell, they're both equally sound models. But if I were president of the United States, I would want to follow the very disastrous Imperial College model. And the reason is, if I'm wrong and the Oxford model, which is less disastrous, turns out to be what really happens, well, then I look like I saved millions of lives, because it was less disastrous than I forecasted. And if I'm right, then I'm doing the right thing. If I pick the less disastrous model and then I'm wrong, then I look like the president who killed millions of people. So I think it's in the interest of a politician who wants to get reelected, which our current president certainly does, to err on the side of extreme caution. And I feel that that's what's going on politically, basically. But we still don't know. We really don't know. And that gave me some kind of reassurance. Like, we're all dummies here, and we're trying to muddle through this thing, and we're letting the people who have studied these issues in depth kind of guide us, which is, I think, a smart thing to do. But nobody really knows what's going to go on and how it's going to turn out in the end, and whether we can manage it. But I feel like the world has gone through some pretty bad stuff and managed it before. And I still have confidence that we're going to manage this one. Oh, and there was one other aspect of what Nishijima Roshi told me that I don't know how relevant it is, so I'm putting it here at the end. But he told me that there is heredity and habit. This is how he put it. And habit is stronger than heredity. So he was speaking specifically about the Huntington's disease problem that I was facing, and saying that habit was stronger than heredity. And I had to kind of work out what that meant, and I have worked out what I think that meant, and I have followed that advice. I don't know if that directly relates to the COVID-19 thing, but it might, and you can think about it if you'd like. So there you go. That's my message. I hope that was hopeful and uplifting somehow. If you want to donate to me, there are PayPal and Patreon links below. As I keep saying, if you feel like you can't afford it and you're a Patreon member and you want to suspend your membership for a while, or you want to stop donating by PayPal, it's okay. I've got a little bit of savings, and I think as long as they open up the world soon enough, I'll be able to survive. So I do thank all of you who are still hanging in there and still donating, because that really is really nice and really helpful. So we'll see you later. If you want to see more of Genjo Koan, let me know. It just doesn't seem like most people want to. We were just getting to what I thought was the good part. So, I can do that more if you want. Anyway, we'll see you later. Bye.